What's the deal, my people? You know it is Don Tony Teflon, and I'm back at you another one with some real, official Game of Thrones prequel news. Before we get into this, let me thank all the people who have stuck with me throughout this second long night. Know that the Don Tony Teflon TV will be back on the grind, doing videos for Game of Thrones, this prequel series, and others. So make sure that you subscribe and click that bell so you can be notified every time I drop a new Game of Thrones video. Now, the working title for the prequel is Blood Moon, but George R.R. Martin himself has called it The Long Night. So for this video, I'm gonna call it The Long Night. And George R.R. Martin has given us more clues to exactly what this prequel series will be. And that gives me good hope that this will be a good series, because it seems that George R.R. Martin himself is involved heavily in this series. Because when Game of Thrones was at its best, it's when George R.R. Martin had something to do with it. So let's hope that the man stays involved in this. So let me give you 5 things that George has just revealed about this new Long Night prequel. EW recently spoke to author and executive producer George R.R. Martin about showrunner Jane Goldman's pilot, which is currently called The Long Night and is currently filming in Northern Ireland. Now, Martin has stated in the past this series will take place roughly around 5,000 years before the events of Game of Thrones, when Westeros was a very different place, and will lead up to an epic confrontation with the White Walkers known as The Long Night. Now, some fans have been concerned about the show not having any Targaryens in it, so EW asked George R.R. Martin about this, and Martin gave some very interesting details to let fans know that this series will be just as epic, if not more, even without the Targaryens. Number 1, Westeros will be divided into roughly 100 kingdoms during the prequel. Now, the Westeros that we know is the one after Aegon's conquest, which he made the 7 kingdoms himself. But before that, Martin says, if you go back further to a time, there were 12 kingdoms, and eventually you go back where there were 100 kingdoms, petty kingdoms, and that's the era we're talking about. The 7 kingdoms maintained some degree of order, at least until war broke out. So it sounds like Westeros will have even more backstabbing and even more treachery, more red wedding type events I believe will take place in the prequels. Number 2, the pack surely does survive. That means that the Starks will be in this story. Now, I'm sure people may have thought that the Starks would be in it because they were around at the time, but now we have confirmation from George R.R. Martin himself that the family favorite of all these fans will be there. The Starks will definitely be there, he said. And while much has been made about the fact that the prequels predate the dragons, that doesn't mean that there won't be other creatures. Obviously, the White Walkers are here, or as they are called in the books, known to these people as the Others. And as you will expect, Martin says, there will be things like direwolves and mammoths. Maybe we can even see some squishers if we're lucky. Number 3, there will not be any Lannisters, well, at least not at first. Now, the prequels predate the rise of the Lannister family, Martin says, but there is another family currently residing in the future Lannisters' homestead. The Lannisters aren't there yet, but Casterly Rock is certainly there. It's like the Rock of Casterly, he says. It's actually occupied by the Casterlys, which is how Casterly Rock got its name. Now, we all know from the books that the Casterlys were supposedly swindled out of their homestead by a man called Lan the Clever, who founded House Lannister. So most likely, during the end, we could possibly see Lan the Clever, or we could see him rise, and we could see exactly how he pulled this feat off, how he swindled this family out of the greatest and most wealthiest place in all of Westeros. And I believe that I have come up with a theory that will explain exactly how this man pulled that feat off. So make sure you are subscribed, because the next video I will do is exactly that. How Lan the Clever swindled Casterly Rock from the Casterlys. Number 4, the show might get a slightly different title than the one we're expecting. The prequel is still officially untitled, Martin emphasizes. In the past, the author had suggested the title should be called The Long Night, but behind the scenes, this is a complicated factor, since the third episode of Game of Thrones Season 8 is also titled The Long Night. So even though that this is the title that George R.R. Martin wants himself, he does not know if he will be able to get this title. Now, George R.R. Martin says that he heard a suggestion that it should be called The Longest Night. So maybe that's what we'll get. We know that the working title is Blood Moon, but whatever it is, I think it should be called Game of Thrones, blah, 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 blah. You know, I think it should have something like that to tie Game of Thrones into it, to make the fan base know that this is still a Game of Thrones show. Kinda like The Walking Dead did for their second show. Last but not least, number 5, and it is that this show is a true assembly. Now, a lot of people think that this show is going to be led by 3 women because those are the names that we have seen the most during this prequel. And one is Naomi Watts, another one is Naomi Ackel, and the last is Denise Guile. Now, when asked this, George R.R. Martin has said that it's more accurately described as an ensemble story. I hesitate to use the word lead, Martin says. He goes on to say that never in the history of Game of Thrones, all the years that it's been on, it's never been nominated for Best Lead Actor or Best Lead Actress. It's always been supporting people that have come home with these Emmys, and that is the way he's seeing it. That's the way he wants it to be again. Which tells me not all 3 of these ladies are going to survive. In fact, I don't think a lot of people are going to survive. I think that's the reason why no one ever won lead actor, because people kept getting taken out and killed all different ways. I think we're going to see that, and it's going to be upped during the prequel series. I really was suspicious about this prequel series when I first heard of it, but now seeing again that George R.R. Martin is so involved, I am all about it, and I cannot wait to see it. And I want to see these evil children of the forest in there, and I want them to be exposed for the evil people that they truly are, because these are the creatures that brought on the Long Night, and I hope that they show that. And also, when they showed the picture of the old Night King, I hope that they explain that too, exactly who that Night King is and why they picked that person to be the Night King. Because even though this predates House Targaryen, so to say, it does not mean that there cannot be Valyrian blood floating around back at this time, which I think there is, and I think that this will explain exactly all that. Or at least I'm hoping that it explains all that. But you tell me in the comment section what you are looking forward to most in these prequels. Is it the whole big pack of direwolves? Is it giants and mammoths? Because we know we have to have a lot of giants back then, and we have to have a lot of mammoths that they're riding around. I would love to see the king of giants and everything else like that. Are we going to see a whole different set of wildlings? Probably not, because the wall will not be there, so it'll just be the people living beyond the wall. Will we see the invention of the wildlings and people who lived there before the wall got put up, and see how wild those people truly were back then? Will we see the rise of House Stark, or will House Stark already rule the North? Or we see how the Starks conquered all the other petty kingdoms in the North? I'm hoping that we see that. Will we see the evil children of the forest exposed for the evil beings that they are? Will we see children of the forest having sex with the first men and creating the reeds? We shall see. What's going on? I am looking forward to this series. I hope you are too. I hope this got you hyped and ready to go. And as always, hit that subscribe button, because I will be putting out every video on any solid news, any silent information that we get about this series. You know you can always find those details right here on Teflon TV. And until next time, you know who it is. Peace and stay sexy.